Welcome everyone to live stream 7 of the space shooter game in DevVenture with MTK. So continuing where we left off, I was trying to fix the bugs that came up during the implementation of the mining vessel's grinding behavior. All right. And we found that there were some errors, and we fixed most of them, in fact all of them. And the mining behavior now works exactly as expected, except that now we need to consider what, well, not except, but now we need to work on what next to implement. All right. Do we go forward with the vertical motion, correcting that, or do we advance the barrel grinding behavior so that we can actually see how many resources we have extracted from the mining object that we have, in quotes, attacked with the mining barrel? I think for now, it's more important to focus on the basics. And one of those basics is to have all 6 degrees of freedom. Okay? So, with that in mind, let's fix the vertical motion. We'll go into the scripting window for the mining player behavior. We'll find the code where rise and fall was implemented, then toggle the comments. Expected an if statement and found an elif instead. I see. So why don't you just put it here? I wonder if the move and slide was the problem. Let's try now in test flight. If I press Q and E, nothing happens. Okay. So let's do this again. Then put it in DeepSeek and try and figure out why this isn't working. So from here, right down. In fact, copy the whole thing. Okay. And here we go. So I'm saying here is the mining vessel. Or was it mining player behavior? Mining player behavior.gd. Okay, so I've given it the code of mining player behavior, like I mentioned here. Here's the code of mining player behavior.gd, and then at the bottom I ask oh, okay. I see one of my audience members tried to advise me that I was muted, but it seems that it wasn't their side. But thank you for the warning. I appreciate it. So when pressing rise or fall, nothing happens. Please help me figure out why without fixing the code for me. Okay. Um, so I know that there is this like stigma attached to using AI to fix your bugs or write your code or do what's called vibe coding, right? But there is a difference between using AI 100% and relying on it completely without doing any of the work yourself versus using it as a tool to empower you and to make you more efficient. And then there's another option, a third option, the one that I use, which is you use it as, like a co-pilot or a navigator or someone who, assists you without fixing problems for you. And in this case, I'm using DeepSeek's extensive knowledge of Godot documentation and expertise in GDScript, which, by the way, is better than other AI solutions. That's why I use DeepSeek for Godot. And so I use it to help me figure out the problem. And I ask it to make me or help me to figure it out myself. That way I learn from the process without, um, you know, letting DeepSeek do everything, and then I don't get anything from it. I don't learn anything. I don't gain any experience from it. I just have working code at the end, and I have no idea what happened. So this way we get a hybrid approach, right? So let's continue with that. Oh, I see. I see that I'm still on the PowerPoint slides. I need to learn to switch properly. Sorry about that. Okay, so here we go. So DeepSeek is saying, looking at your code, I can identify the issue with rise and fall actions not working. The problem is in the logic flow of your physics process function. So the rise and fall movement, the movement code is placed before the main movement code that uses set velocity and move and slide. This creates a conflict where the later movement code overwrites the velocity that you set for rising or falling. Specifically, you set velocity for rise or fall with set velocity global transform.basis.y.normalized times top speed over the minimum speed. And then you call move and slide immediately afterwards. But then later in the same function, you overwrite that velocity with set velocity global transform.basis.z.normalized times current speed. And then call move and slide again. The problem is that the second set velocity call immediately overrides the velocity you set for rising and falling, and the second move and slide uses that new velocity instead. How do you fix it? You need to restructure your movement logic so that all velocity calculations happen together before a single move and slide call at the end. The rise-fall movement should contribute to the final velocity rather than being separate movements. Think about how to combine the forward and backward movement with the rising and falling movement into a single velocity vector that gets applied once at the end of the function. The key insight is that you should only call move and slide once per physics frame, and all velocity calculations should be calculated before that final call. Okay, so I was on roughly the right track when I said that I should comment out the move and slides. And I apologize again that I didn't show that to you guys, and I showed the power slides instead, PowerPoint slides. So let's comment these out here and figure out current speed. See, if they say UI up and UI down, we influence the current speed, but we don't actually set the velocity. That's a key distinction. Now let's find out where current speed is defined. It's up here, and it's an integer variable. Why is it an integer variable and not a vector 3? Why aren't we working with ship velocity instead? Okay, let's interact with DeepSeek again and say, I noticed that I am modifying the current speed variable for the other input operations, and current speed is an integer. Shouldn't I rather be modifying the ship velocity variable so I can influence all three directions in one variable? Would it make more sense to have current x speed, current y speed, and current z speed? Okay, so we've identified the core issue, and we are thinking about the right kind of things. So yes, using a single current speed integer that only controls the z-axis forward and backward movement conflicts with trying to use separate y-axis movement. The set velocity calls are overwriting each other because they are trying to control different axes with the same mechanism. Better approach, a vector-based movement. Use a single ship velocity vector, vector 3, to track the movement in all directions x, y, and z, and then separate axis controls or separate axis controls. Use separate variables like current x speed, current y speed, or current z speed, and then input-based velocity accumulation. Calculate velocity contributions from all inputs first, then apply them together. So these are all separate approaches. One would work, any of them. The vector-based approach would be this way. So you, instead of using current speed, you use the ship velocity, which we've already defined. If I go back to the script, you can see that it's here, ship velocity. And then add forward and backward movement to the z, rise and fall movement to the y, and strafing movement to ship velocity x if you want lateral movement, which we do. We do want that. If we want to have all 6 degrees of freedom, we will need to add that in. And I'm already thinking of a way to add it in, which is when holding the right mouse button down, then pressing A and D, so left and right. Instead of doing the rotation, as in roll on the z-axis, we make it strafe left and right. The alternative would be to use Z and C, which is below A and D, which makes things a bit more complicated on the keyboard, and I'd rather not. So, you know, it's all down to just what is more efficient and what is more comfortable for the player to do. So once you've added all x, y, and z components for the vector 3, then you set the final velocity once and call move and slide once. Okay, so now we can go back to the code down here somewhere. Rise and fall. And then instead of saying set velocity here, we can say ship velocity dot y is equal to, or rather is assigned ship velocity times top speed. Ship velocity dot y times top speed. But that doesn't work because ship velocity dot y is currently 0. Do we have a top speed? How does the normal movement work? If I go here, current speed plus equals acceleration. Okay, so ship velocity dot y plus equals acceleration. We'll get rid of that. We say if ship velocity dot y is less than top speed, then increment by acceleration. And the same thing here. If ship velocity dot y is greater than negative top speed, then we say ship velocity dot y increment by acceleration. Okay. And then down here, where we set the velocity, we set the velocity to be ship velocity times current speed. Okay. Let's run that and see. Aha, it works. And it works, but it doesn't stop you when you let go, which I want. So what I'm doing now is I'm just making sure that when I let go of rise, that the ship velocity dot y is set back to 0. And I'm going to repeat that same thing for the fall key. So if I do this with the fall key, so notice that this doesn't accelerate and decelerate in the same way. It just like strafes. Okay. And I want this to be almost like a puff of air or something that an astronaut would use to control themselves in space, right? It's just like puff downwards to move up and then puff upwards to stop. And in the same kind of style, that's what rise and fall should do. That's the okay. It works, but it's supposed to be negative top speed for when I press fall. And now I can repeat that same thing for this. So I can say if input dot is action pressed, the UI left key and input dot is action pressed mouse. Where do I find that? Go to project settings, input map, right mouse button. So that's shoot. So now I need to create a new button called strafe. And under strafe, I can add a key, mouse button, right mouse button. There you go. Okay. Now if I go here, and I can say is action pressed strafe, then ship velocity dot x is top speed, and is released. Is action just released? And the same thing here. But the key point here is or. If either of them are released, if I release left or I release the strafe key, it should stop. And then I set this to 0. Okay, and the same thing here, so I can say else if the input is action just pressed, nope, is action pressed, so continuously being pressed, the strafe key and input is action pressed UI right. Then we can say ship velocity dot x is negative top speed, and then I can do the same code here. But you know what? I can actually be even more efficient with this and just say, no, I can't. Never mind. It's trying to be smarter than I need to be. And that was actually a dumb thing to do. So let's do that. See, the reason is I was going to say if they release left or right or strafe in one if statement. But the thing is, you're either moving left or you are moving right. You can't be doing both. And so you need separate if statements. You can't combine them. Okay, so let's double check this. So pressing A and D rotates in the wrong direction. We'll fix that. But if I'm holding strafe, nothing happens. That's not good. It's the wrong direction. Okay. Which one is rise? Which one is fall? Rise is E. Why is rise E? I suppose it is. Q should be right mouse button. Let's make this a tree. Okay, so if is action pressed, sorry, input dot is action pressed, strafe. Now, if input dot is action pressed, UI left, then we say ship velocity dot x is minus top speed. Else if input dot is action pressed, UI right, then we say that ship velocity dot x is positive top speed. Then we say at the bottom here, if input dot is action pressed, sorry, is action just released, strafe, or input is action just released, UI left, ship velocity dot x is 0. Else if input dot is action just released strafe, or input dot is action just released UI right. Then set ship velocity dot x to 0. Okay, let's try that. No, not working. Okay. Sorry, that was a mistake. So let's do this. Copy that and paste it. But this time we swap these around. So like this. And now maybe that will fix the directions. So left should turn left, right should turn right. Let's see if that works. Left and right. Left, right, left, and right. Yes, that's correct. But holding the strafe doesn't work. So what if we change in the project settings, we change strafe to be shift instead. So now if I hold down shift and press A and D, nothing happens. Okay, well we know now that we don't need this commented line anymore because it works as expected. So we just clean that. But this isn't working. Okay, let's check with DeepSeek. Here. Here's the current code. Vertical strafing works, but horizontal strafing does not work. Please help me figure out why. Okay, so looking at your code, I can identify the issue with the horizontal strafing not working. The problem is in your input handling logic for the strafing controls. The issue. Your strafing logic has a problem with the condition checks. Look at the section. Is action pressed strafe? Input is action pressed UI left, and then is action pressed UI right. The else if in the first block means only one direction can be checked at a time. The release logic has overlapping conditions that might cancel each other out. You're not handling the case where both strafe and a direction key are pressed together correctly. Think about this scenario. What happens if strafe is pressed but neither UI nor UI left nor UI right are pressed? What happens when UI left is released but strafe is still held down? How does the elif affect checking for both left and right simultaneously? The issue is that your current logic doesn't properly handle the combination of the strafe modifier with the direction keys, and the release conditions might be resetting the velocity unexpectedly. You need to restructure this logic to properly handle the modifier key pattern where strafe acts as a shift key that enables lateral movement when held down with direction keys. Okay, so back to the code. Let's try this. And this. No, it's all part of the same block. Keep it together. Okay, let's try it like this. If they're all under the same block, right? So while the player is holding down the strafe key, if they press left or right, then we change the x direction speed to be positive or negative top speed. And if they are releasing left or right, we set the velocity to 0. And it doesn't matter if they are holding down the strafe key, as long as they aren't pressing left or right, the player shouldn't move. And as long as they are pressing left or right, the player should move. But if they release the strafe key while holding left or right, they shouldn't continue strafing. And so let's say if input so we say else if input dot is action just released strafe, then we set ship velocity dot x to be 0. And now we'll test that. Okay, holding down shift and turning instead of strafing. Holding down right click and we're still turning and not strafing. What's going on? Okay, so here is the modified code. Modified code. The horizontal strafing is still not working. The player is doing roll rotations instead. Is still doing roll rotations instead. Okay, so here it's saying, looking at the code, I can identify the issue. The problem is that you're using the same input actions, UI left and UI right, for both rolling and strafing, which creates a conflict. The conflict is this. You're using UI left and UI right for rolling in this line, which is the one we modified. But you're also trying to use the same UI left and UI right actions for strafing when the strafe modifier is pressed. And the problem is that when you're pressing left or right, it's always contributing to the roll rotation, regardless of whether you are holding the strafe modifier key or not. The strafing logic can't override the rolling behavior. You have two options to fix this. Use different input actions for strafing versus rolling. Create new actions like strafe left and strafe right. Modify the logic, or you could modify the logic to check if strafe is pressed before applying rotation. Think about which approach makes more sense for your control scheme. If you want the same keys to do different things based on the modifier, you'll need to restructure how you handle the roll input when the strafe modifier is active. The key insight is that you can't have the same input actions controlling two different behaviors simultaneously without proper conditional logic to determine which behavior should take precedence. Fine. Let's do that change then. Okay, so we'll make new keys. It'll be easier. We make a new action called strafe underscore left. We'll add it. And then we'll make another one called strafe underscore right. We'll add that. And then for this one, we'll add strafe left as C. And change it to Z because it's left. And then we'll change strafe right to C. And then go back to the code and modify it so that we don't need this anymore. We'll undo this. And get rid of that one. And instead of UI, we'll change it to strafe left. We'll change this one to strafe right. The same thing here. Strafe left. And this one here, strafe right. We'll save the game and test it. So if I run the game now and I press C and Z, So it works, but of course the directions are flipped over. So strafe right needs to be negative x, and strafe left needs to be positive x. So we'll change that and test it again. Okay, so forward accelerates forward. No, it doesn't, because it's adding to current speed. Okay, that's why. Quickly. Here, current speed. If ship velocity dot z is less than top speed, then ship velocity dot z plus equals acceleration. Same thing here. Column 48. Okay, let's find all instances of current velocity and fix it now. Where is it? Yeah, current speed. We'll keep scrolling down until we find something. There should be nothing. Ah, here we go. Speed percentage should be ship velocity.z. Search again. Nothing. Excellent. We'll save that. Okay, I'm aware that we are out of time, so I'll fix that, test it, and then I will apply the same changes to player behavior before the next live stream, so that we can move on in the next live stream. Okay, so let's test it now. That rotates correctly, that accelerates correctly, but okay, that's a new problem. We are supposed to be going in the direction we are facing, and then again we are influencing global directions instead of local directions. Okay, more bugs to fix. No problem. We'll fix them next time. So I'm going to conclude things here, but I will make one last call to action, that you guys join my Discord server. I'll just show you that. So here it is. You can see here we've got all of the different tabs for all the different content, right? So for YouTube, Coffee, anything I release on Fab, Gumroad, or Substack. And then we've got the text channels for you, the community, to interact with the channel. And we've got voice channels, 2 voice channels. And then we've got the DevVenturers. They have exclusive content and exclusive channels only for them. So at this point, I would like to make a shout out to Cubes, our junior DevVenturer. Thank you very much for your support. I appreciate it very much. And I encourage the rest of you to check the coffee, the coffee page. If you would like to become a member, or even just make a one-time donation, I would appreciate it very much. Thank you. And yeah, so you can check the link in the description for joining the Discord server. And the link for coffee is over here. Then again, I would like to remind you guys to subscribe if you haven't yet, and give this live stream a like, and share the link with as many people as you can. Just because it's a live stream, that doesn't mean people can't watch it after the live stream is done. It still counts as an ordinary video once the live stream is done. So you can share it with anyone and they can watch it at any time. They don't have to be live. It just happens to be live. Okay, so I'm going to close things off here. Thank you very much for